Welcome, everyone. First of all, I would like to start by saying that the workshop today is being recorded and the video will be uploaded in the website. My name is Pablo Zardoya and I'm a project manager at the Biobank Graz in Austria. I would like to thank you all for taking part in today's webinar called Finding Samples and Data with the Bbmri-Eric Directory and Negotiator. So basically, today you will learn how to find samples from over 600 biobanks across Europe using our Bbmri-Eric directory. And moreover, you will also learn how to send sample requests to multiple biobanks using our Negotiator tool. This webinar is held within the framework of the CODEX4SMES project. But what exactly is this project? CODEX4SMES stands for Companion Diagnostics Expedited for Small and Medium Enterprises. So the project was initially planned for 3 years with a total budget of 3 million euros. This project, however, has two main goals. So it aims to improve the healthcare by enhanced adoption of personalized medicine, but also establish a network which supports small, medium enterprises along the value chains of companion diagnostic development. So in order to achieve that, the Codex projects offer you support with different services. Next slide, please. So along these services, we can find in different stages services such as market analysis, sample access, knowledge transfer, business modeling, and roadshows, but also networking through events like webinars or different types of events, or even a more personal approach. But now, without any more delay, I would like to introduce our next speaker today, Petr Holub, which will show us how to find samples and data with the Bbmri-Eric directory and Negotiator. He's an associate professor of computer science at Masaryk University in Czech Republic. Since 2015, he's also a senior IT and a data protection manager at the Bbmri-Eric, the European Research Infrastructure Consortium for Biobank and Biomolecular Resources. He is also Chief of Information Technology Officer for this institution, and his background has both in science and computer science. So, Professor Holub, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pablo, for the introduction. Welcome everybody. I'd like to welcome all the webinar participants. And as Pablo introduced, I will be talking today about how you can utilize the power of Bbmri research infrastructure, how you could access biological samples and data for research purposes. And I will also talk a little bit in the introduction about the Bbmri as such, how it works, how it's organized. The presentation will basically have 3 parts. One is the general introduction. Then I will walk you through the access procedure. And in the last part, if the network connection stays stable and everything is okay, I will do a live demonstration of the whole tool, or otherwise we use slides and walk through on the slides. But I always believe it's better to use the live demonstration. If you have any questions, please write them in the chat box. Feel free to write them immediately as you have the question. And Viridiana or Pablo, feel free to interrupt me at any time, because it's usually the best if somebody has a question to answer the question right away. So what is Bbmri-Eric? It is one of the largest European research infrastructures for medical research. Currently, we have 20 member states plus International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, which is part of WHO, and it resides in France. And it's a ecosystem of federated biobanks and other resources across the member states of Bbmri. And the goal of Bbmri is to make the biological samples and medical health data more findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, and also share it in compliance with privacy regulations and ethics requirements. We're also aiming at improving the efficiency and reproducibility of medical research. So we work also on topics such as supporting the biobanks with application of the quality management. We're developing in International Standards Organization a standard for data provenance, so describing history of the data from the biological material all the way to the generated and processed data. And we also provide help to our users, be it both the service providers, the biobanks, and the researchers who are accessing the biobanks when it comes to ethical and legal questions. The mission of Bbmri-Eric is to facilitate access to quality defined biological material and data in an ethically and legally compliant manner. As I mentioned, primarily we're focusing on providing access to the biobanks that are within the member states of Bbmri, that is currently Europe. But for some domains, such as rare diseases or COVID-19, we also are allowed to serve the global community. So we're onboarding biobanks from all over the world, as you can see on this map, and also trying to make those accessible via our access tools. When I speak about federated biobanks or federated ecosystem of biobanks, what it means is that the individual biobanks do enjoy quite high level of independence. So they have their own requirements for the access and their own approval procedures. And they're eventually responsible for delivering the data and the biological material. And the role of Bbmri is to enable the researchers to reach those. So how the access procedure in Bbmri-Eric is defined is that it starts with a discovery phase. That means it's in the first step, you need to identify what biobanks and what their collections might be relevant for you as a researchers. And once you know this, once you have the candidate biobanks, you start negotiating access with them. This is still what you are doing on the level of the whole Bbmri-Eric, and we're providing tools that are implementing both the discovery phase and the relatively efficient negotiation phase, even if you are negotiating with a large number of biobanks at the same time. But this is already where we're handing over to the partner biobanks, because eventually it is the biobank and collection representatives that are negotiating in that negotiator platform. As the next step, the researcher and the biobank need to hand over the samples and the data, which, if it's personal data or if it's biological material, it has to be under a contract. So as a prerequisite, you need to sign a material transfer agreement or data transfer agreement, possibly with the exception if you're accessing anonymized data, but that has its own caveats I will just very quickly mention later in the presentation. And then the biobank delivers the samples and data to the researcher. And as the last step, the researcher, once they implement their research and once they're done with the research, they should get back to us, both the biobank and Bbmri-Eric, and again, it's part of the negotiation platform, and notify us that the research project is over. And if there are any data generated as a part of this, the data should be made accessible to the biobank in order to enrich existing data resources. So that if, for instance, sequencing data is generated, the next user who is accessing the same biobank does not need to do the same sequencing. I mean, sometimes people like to do their own sequencing because they believe they have higher quality than the previous sequencing results, but that is their option. But generally, the biobanks should be able to enrich their existing data resources. Similarly, if you're processing the FFPE material, formalin, fixed paraffin, embedded blocks, then this is often scanned as a part of the digital pathology research. So again, the imaging data should be made accessible for the biobank. As I mentioned, there are two main phases, the discovery phase and the access negotiation phase. What you're trying to achieve is identifying the biobanks that might have something relevant for you, be it material, be it data. And at that point, you don't have a guarantee that they do have it, that they do have it for your particular purpose, but you're identifying those potentially relevant resources. And we have a number of different discovery tools integrated within our negotiation platform, starting with the Bbmri-Eric directory, of course. And this is probably the most well-known service, which is currently comprising of about 680 biobanks with more than 2,500 collections of biological material and data. And the directory is working on aggregate data. By aggregate data, I mean you can't find individual data about individual patients there, and the querying of that service is not done based on this individual data. So you have information like this biobank Graz has actually several hundreds of collections, and each collection is characterized by the material type that it contains, by the diseases that are available, by quality certification, by the available data types. And of course, because it's aggregated data, it has also some limitations. You can't guarantee that there is always all the combinations of biological material and advertised biological material and advertised data types, for instance, or material types. But that's not an issue because you will clarify it in the access negotiation phase. The biobanks in the directory have also capability to describe themselves in different levels of granularity. So there are biobanks that are only advertising one collection that is describing all of the samples and all of the data they contain and they allow access to. But there are others, like in Graz, where they go very fine-grained, and this allows the researchers that are requesting access to the biobank to much better understand what the biobank contains. So it is actually desirable to describe the biobanks relatively fine-grained. And you can find different types of collections in the biobanks, ranging from disease-specific collections to collections based on the life cycle of the biological material. So, for instance, one of the Czech biobanks, one of the bigger ones, they have a short-term storage and long-term storage of the data. And in the long-term storage, you would find only a couple of samples per patient, typically, but you keep it for eternity or until it's used for research purposes, or until the material deteriorates so bad. And in the short-term storage, you can find time-consistent series of data and biological material. So if you're interested in year-long follow-up of a patient, this is what you can find in the short-term collection. So there are different types of collections. There are also collections that are case control or population cohorts. So all of these can be found in the directory. Then there is another discovery source. These are the directories of individual national nodes of Bbmri-Eric, and this data flows into Bbmri-Eric directory, of course, but there might have some extensions that are specific or some functionality that is particular to the given national node. So, for instance, extended data model describing the biobanks, or like in the UK, they feature a search based on similarity of papers that were already published using the biobank in the given biobank. Another possibility for the discovery phase is the service that is hosted by our German national node, GBA, German Biobank Alliance, which is called Locator. And this works as so-called federated search on individual sample and donor level data. So you can query, like, give me how many patients you have that have combination of certain diagnosis and certain material type, for instance. And as a result, you're getting a matching number of donors and samples. This is, of course, subject to anonymization measures so that we don't allow simple attacks on the service. But in principle, when accessing more detailed information here, even like per biobank data in the locator, you still need to log in at that point, and you need to agree to the terms and conditions of using Bbmri-Eric services, which basically covers also not abusing the services for the purposes they're not designed for, and not attacking the privacy of participants by trying to counteract the privacy enhancing technologies such as pseudonymization or anonymization. Another example of the discovery service tool that is integrated with the Access negotiation platform is RD Connect Registry and Biobank Finder. So for those of you who might be interested in the rare diseases, this is a tool that specifically focuses on rare diseases and covers not only the biobanks, but also registries. Registries means just the data repositories about patients, typically with some specific rare disease profiles. And again, this one works on aggregate descriptors, and it has, of course, a data model that is specific to the rare diseases. So there is quite a lot of focus there on mutations and phenotype characterizations. So this was a walk through the discovery phase. So once you know who are the candidates to talk to, instead of emailing them and calling them on individual basis, you're encouraged to request access through the Negotiator platform, Bbmri-Eric Negotiator. At this point, a couple of things happens. So first of all, you need to log in. And the same applies, of course, for the biobank and collection representatives, because the Negotiator is the trusted platform in between that where the two parties need to have trustworthy identities. Second thing is, when you're filing a request, you need to declare the purpose. So this is the point where the biobanks, when they investigate availability of the biological material and data, they not only investigate if it's generally available, but if it's available for a particular purpose. So if the biobank has specific legal basis, typically an informed consent, to actually release the biological material or the data to the requester. The Negotiator also allows you to specify very detailed information about the request. So in those discovery tools, you typically have rather limited options of criteria you can search for. From, as I said, from the diagnosis, material types, in case of rare diseases, mutations, types of collaboration. But this is not what the research requests are typically about. You need typically very specific things like the amount of materials, the types of diagnoses that are, or types of analytical methods that are going to be used, so that the biobank can actually assess if the material is suitable for a particular method based on its conservation state. And all of this can be added to the request on top of the search criteria from the discovery phase as unstructured data, as a plain text. So you can go as detailed as needed. And you can, of course, request access to either pseudonymized or anonymized data. From our point of view, if you're doing a medically relevant research, you should always prefer pseudonymized data above anonymized data. The reason is that anonymization is trying to protect privacy of individuals contributing the data in a way that it mangles the data, and it typically may harm the data quality, and it typically does harm the data quality in the sense that you can't be certain if the given combination of parameters was really what you see, or if there were some noise modulated on the data, in order to prevent re-identification of the donors, of the data subjects.
Peter,
of course, yes.
We have one question from Veronica. From my experience, it is very difficult to receive back results because, one, we don't know about the quality of these results, the way they have been obtained, etc. Number two, moreover, there are millions of different types of results that could come back: picture, diagrams, sequences, chromatograms. How would you store these results?
Okay, so what we do is, of course, that this goes back to the access policy where I described the data return principle at the end, and there are several options, and it is of course always up to the biobank to judge what they want to store, what they don't want to store. They are not forced. As I said, the researcher should offer the data to the biobank, but the biobank can decide to reject it, or can decide to say, okay, we actually can't store it. It's large sequencing data, but you can deposit it in a service like EGA, for instance, European Genome Phenome Archive, and provide us with the handle in there with some persistent identifier, say that we know that the data is in there and it links to specific patients recognized by the pseudonyms, and you don't need to care about the data yourself. However, many modern biobanks are now becoming more and more data banks. Not so much the biobanks, or well, biobanks as well, but many requests are actually going for the data. And that means the biobank should be ready for serving those data-only researchers as well. And it always helps when you have the data ready and you don't need to generate the data from the samples for each request. So in this sense, we encourage the biobanks to get the data back. If the biobank can't host the data, the data should be also offered back to Bbmri-Eric, and we can discuss with the biobank if we have some other alternative options and support the biobank in storing the data somewhere, be it at Bbmri-Eric, be it at some third-party provided service. And eventually we can always say, well, we can't host. Does it answer your question? And of course, there can be really heterogeneous types of data, and you may decide as a biobank that you're only specializing on certain types of the data. So be it the omics data, and even that is incredibly broad domain, or digital pathology scans, so that the next time the user requests FFPE material, they can get directly slides if they just need the slides for AI analysis, for instance. Okay, so let me continue. And if there are any further questions, feel free to ask again.
Thank you, Peter. Oh, Sorry, and we have another question from Emma Snapes. So, does the discovery negotiator still allow normal operation of submission of the proposed use to the Biobank Access Committee for approval of access according to the defined purpose? Is there a time limit associated with the negotiation process?
Okay, so for the first part of the question, yes, of course, that is the purpose of the negotiator. So it does not interfere with those processes that are within the biobank. It hands it over to the biobank. So in the negotiator, how the platform works is the researcher files a request, and the biobanks are notified, and they can use several tools in there to proceed with the request. So they should use the state machine of the negotiator. This is a relatively new functionality in there since about summer this year, so they can follow the request in a structured form. So first, and I'll get back or I'll get to this further in the presentation. And then at some point they're investigating if the material, they indicate they're investigating if the material and the data is available for a particular purpose. And this actually runs within the biobank. So it's up to their own internal data access committee or material access committee or ethics, if they need ethics approval themselves in the biobank and they go for some secondary use of the data. This can all happen within the biobank. And at the end, once these processes are done, they indicate the result. And again, we get to it. What was the second part of the question? The time limits. If there are any time limits. No, they're not. But we're measuring the performance of the biobanks in this sense. We're looking how the biobanks are reactive. And we're trying to help the biobanks if they get stuck, and we also try to encourage them to react as swiftly as possible. And we know that sometimes it's complicated, but there are also many researcher types that are relatively impatient, so we need to find some middle ground. And from this perspective, we don't have any formal deadlines. But we can report back how fast the biobanks are reacting. I'll continue with the presentation because there is still quite a few things I wanted to show. And it will also get us to some of those questions that you had, like about the state of the request and different steps that are what is within the biobank, what is within the negotiation platform. We're also having a couple more tools that are supporting access, and namely here I would like to stress two of them. One comes from our quality management team. This is Bbmri-Eric self-assessment survey. This is a tool for the biobanks, which they can go through with their collections of samples and data. And if this ends up assessed favorably, they can publish compliance of collection to biobanking standards in the Bbmri-Eric directory and possibly in the locator in the future. Another tool is the ethics check. So if the requester is stuck somewhere on the ethics, our LC team can support the user. However, we can't provide a paid legal advice typically, but we can at least help the user where to proceed, what to look for. If you need any help, you can request help from either your national node if you're in a country. So I've given an example here of Cecilia Engels in Germany, but in general it's from the national node, or via Bbmri help desk for the negotiator. Or you can also, if you're not confident, if you have any problems with the requests, you as a researcher, as a requester, you can also drop an email to accessrequests@helpdesk Bbmri-Eric EU, and we will file the request on your behalf and walk you through the process. So now I will switch over to the live demonstration. I would just ask if Very again, if you can, if the screen works well, because now it's relatively important.
Yes, we can see
So
everything.
here, yeah. So here you can see Bbmri-Eric directory. You can find it through Google, of course, but it's directory bbmri-eric.eu. And here you can see how it looks in its simple interface. We also have advanced interface for logged in users, but this is more technical interface that allows you to filter for any collections or any biobanks based on any data that is available in the directory. But because it's relatively complex data model, the querying itself is also relatively complex. So most of the users are using this simple interface. What you can find here is you can search for by name, identifier, and acronym of the biobank here. So keep in mind this free text search is only for those 3 fields. You can search for the diagnosis. You can search for different material types, different countries which you want to work with. Here are collections and biobank quality marks. So they're different because biobanks are the institutional entities. The collections are the collections of material and the data, or the data. So typically on the biobank level, you have the institutionally accredited processes and institutional accreditation, such as ISO 9000 series or 15189 for medical laboratories, for instance. While the collections are typically those that are compliant with the new ISO standards for different material types in biobanks. Then the collection types, I've already mentioned some of those, and if the biobank is part of some biobank network or collection network, and if there are any particular data types available. So this is, you can filter for all of these. And in particular, if you're searching for COVID related thing, then you can filter specifically for COVID relevant collections, or you can search also for specific services that are relevant to COVID, such as availability of BSL-2, BSL-3 laboratories, or ability to set up prospective collections, or animal testing facility, or virus sequencing facility. Now to the diagnosis available. This is a little tricky and requires some explanation. So you should probably, or you probably know that the diagnosis and the medical research are coded using different coding schemes. We are currently using mainly 2 coding schemes, ICD-10 and Orphanet. Orphanet is specifically for the rare diseases. ICD-10 is commonly used in the whole Europe, basically. So let's assume that I'm making a research request for I'm going to do a digital pathology project on colorectal cancer. And because I know the numbers from the top of my head, of course, for this particular thing, I can easily show you how it works. So let's assume colorectal cancer. So that is C18. This is malignant neoplasms of colon. C19, which is rectosigmoid junction, and C20 codes. Now, what happens is the search is doing a bit more than just searching for those specific codes because there are hierarchies of those codes. So for instance, the C18 class has subclasses like C18.0, 0.1, 0.2, depending on the position of the colon where the tumor, where the malignant neoplasm is. And the search does this for you automatically. So if the biobank advertises C18.1 and you're searching for C18, it is also found, of course. However, what it does not do is if you're searching for something specific, it does not find more general things. So if you're searching for C18.1, it does not search also C18 because that would make things cumbersome for you because you're searching for something very specific. However, sometimes you manually want to do this more generic search. So in this particular case, the ICD-10 codes are also forming upward hierarchies. They're forming blocks and chapters. And now you can see that when I was searching for those specific C18, 19, and 20 diagnoses, I found about 48 organizations with 1,100 collections. However, some biobanks might be advertising whole blocks of diagnoses. So if you start searching for C00 something, you would find that there are actually blocks that are overlapping with those C18. So if I add those few more, what was the other one? There is also C15 block, C26. So you can find that out of a sudden we have about, and I think we still do have the big block missing, the big chapter missing. I somehow did it, clicked wrong. So now you can see that we have much more than those 48 biobanks and 111 collections. Now we have about 100 biobanks with 400 matching collections. This comes at a cost of lower specificity, of course, and this is also the answer for the biobanks, that the more precise you are with the diagnosis that you're providing for the collections, the better likelihood is that you're found with a specific request. And because I'm searching for digital pathology project, I'm searching for FFPE material, so tissue, paraffin, preserved. Now what happens is that the search actually searches for any of these diagnoses and these any of these that are clicked in here. So from the logic perspective, there is OR logic here within each facet. So if I click, so let's have a look now. So now I have 55 organizations and 131 collections that do have any of these diagnoses, and they have FFPE material available. If I add here frozen, fresh frozen, the candidate collection of or selection of the biobanks in their collection actually grows, because now it's searching for any of those diagnoses and FFPE or tissue that is fresh frozen. And I can do it like this. So this is more likely for the digital pathology purpose. And at this point, I am done. I have identified the candidate biobanks, and I proceed into the negotiator. So I hit the request samples. What happens here? You're transferred to the negotiator, and you're required to log in. So now you can see that I'm already at the negotiator, Bbmri-Eric U, and here you can see the message login to continue the query creation process. So yes, I log in. Now you need to have an identity with Bbmri. How can you get one? You can use your home organization if it participates in so-called EduGain, that's European Federation of Identity Providers. So Bbmri is participating, but that is for only for the people who are employed directly by Bbmri-Eric. If your institution is not participating, so let's say it's Medical University Graz, and you can see the Medical University of Vienna is participating, but Medical University Graz is not participating, then you have two other options. You can sign in using ORCID. So if you are a researcher yourself and you have an ORCID, ORCID identifier, then you can log in through the ORCID service. Or as a kind of last resort option is you can sign in or sign up with the Life Science Hostel. And that only requires your email address and a password and your name, of course, and we will get you registered. So let's simplify my life here. And if we have some spare time at the end, I can show also the registration process. So I am logging in via Bbmri. And now I'm in the negotiator and I'm filing the new request. So here you can see what the query was that brought you here. So I was searching for those two material types and the list of diagnoses. And there are 132 matching collections. And I can provide now, and I'll file it as a test request, so it will not bother anybody. So the title of the request, so a description. This is, I am aiming to get 6,000 scans of tissue. And you can also provide things here as PDFs, so you don't need to copy paste everything here. For instance, if you have a ethics vote as a PDF, you can put it here. You can then upload it, browse, and then upload. And then once you're done with this request, I'll mark it as a test request, so it does not land in the normal inbox of the biobanks. I submit the request. So now this is what happens. This is the main interface of the negotiator. You can see that because I'm doing a lot of demonstrations for different people, I have a lot of test requests, but I have also some serious requests in here as well. But fortunately, we don't see them because Bbmri and all the biobanks that are contributing to Bbmri are bound to confidentiality. So we're not supposed to disclose anybody's real requests, and we're not supposed to use it for any other purpose than indicating availability of the biological material and data, and eventually providing the data or the biological material if requested and available. So you should, the researchers should not be afraid of filing the requests in here and being concerned that the request would be abused for some competing research projects or things like that. That's covered by the policy, and all the biobanks have to agree to it. Now I will switch back to the presentation because I want to show you how the request evolves. So now we are in the first step. The researcher has filed the request. The next step is that Bbmri-Eric checks if the request is compliant with the access policy. This is not any scientific excellence check or any check on the meaningfulness of the request. This is just plain check to ensure that the negotiator is not abused for some weird attempts. I mean, we have seen in the past some people trying to distribute questionnaires through the negotiator, and this is clear violation of the purpose of the negotiator. So unless the request is really directly violating the access conditions, it is permitted by Bbmri staff, the access manager of Bbmri, and the negotiation starts. So at this point, the biobanks are notified that there is a new request, if it's approved, and the negotiation starts. What can happen in the negotiation is a couple of things. The biobanks can find the request underspecified, and they can communicate it in a request-wide communication that there is further specification needed, and the requester, the researcher, can react to it and refine the request until, and this can go as long as needed for the biobanks to actually decide on availability or unavailability of the material and data. Sometimes it's also there is a need for confidential communication between the researcher and the negotiator. This is also and the biobank. This is also supported in the negotiator. So if you have something like discussion of pricing or some things that might be competitive between the biobanks, you have means to do it. And last but not least, there is a state machine behind the request. And the biobanks and the researchers should move this forward. And this has been recently introduced, and we're still optimizing how it looks, not how it works, because internally it works well, but we know that sometimes users just don't use it. So we're making it more streamlined and more visible for both the researchers and the biobankers, so that they know that they should push the request further down the state machine, down the states. So the next step is the biobanks should flag availability. There can be basically 4 states. I have 3 of them in here. Data material available and accessible for given purpose, material data available but not accessible for given purpose, data and material not available. And we have recently added one more option, that the data and material can be collected prospectively, if it's okay for the researcher. Then the researcher picks with which biobanks she wants to continue with. So at that point, the biobanks that are picked will see it and will continue. The others are put on hold until the request is closed, because then it's clear that there are others will not be selected. I mean, sometimes the researchers do it stepwise, so they select one biobank to continue with, and then they get only a portion of what they needed, so they also select few more and go through it. And then in the next step, the researcher signs MTA or DTA with each biobank, and the delivery starts. And this can be all traced in the negotiator. I'll quickly go through the screenshots here only to show you how it looks. And then the research is performed, and eventually there is the end of project notification. So this is the request filing, which you have already seen. Here is another example of the locator service. So this is how it looks, where you are searching on individual level data, and you get statistics per biobank, how many donors, how many samples are available, and you can pick with which of those biobanks you can negotiate. And once you hit the negotiate button, you end up in the negotiator in the same way you have seen it with the directory. So here you have an example. Then, well, this is just marking the test request. You have seen it. And then this is the updates of the state of the request. So initially, this is what the requester would see, that the biobank has indicated they're interested and they're checking status. So this is exactly what the previous question was. This is the phase where the biobanks are doing their own internal processes, running it through their access committees, going through the ethics votes if necessary. Sometimes if this takes long, you may also use the individual negotiation here and inform the user, the requester, that this is going to take I don't know, 3 months, because the ethics committee only comes together every 2 months. And then once, so this is for the biobankers, they need to select this, that I'm interested, I'm checking status. And then in the next state, the biobank indicate, well, the samples are available and accessible, or available, not accessible, those states that I have mentioned. And they also, if the data samples are available and accessible, they also can indicate how many donors and how many samples they actually can provide. This can be completely different number to what the user has found in the directory, because you might have many samples, but as a part of the access committee, you have only decided to release small portion of those because of access prioritization, or because you have only informed consent for the given, compatible with the given purpose for a very small portion of those. So here you can provide those numbers, and this is a good indication for the researcher to know what they can get. The next step is still on the biobanker side. They should indicate the access conditions. So if they choose it here, they can upload, they can provide the access conditions in the plain text, or they can upload it as an MTA or other document templates or ready-made documents here, and update the status. And this shows up for the requester, for the researcher, as PDFs that are available for, or Word documents that are available for further editing and finishing on their side. Now the biobanker is waiting for the requester because the biobanker has provided everything up to the MTA DTA. Now, if the requester selects given biobank, and that means they click accept access conditions and proceed with the given biobank or with the given collection. This is handed over again to the biobank, and the biobank indicates once the MTA and the other paperwork is signed, and when the samples and the data are delivered. Shipped. You can also provide shipping number as a part of this process to ease up the tracing of the shipment for the researcher. And I have skipped one step here, but the researcher is also indicating if the material and the data is received, so that we have a confirmation in the negotiator that the material or the data was successfully delivered. And as the last step on the requester side is, once they finish the project, they would announce the end of the project and the data return would start. So if there is any data available, the researcher would indicate offer data return, and the requester and the representative would, well, sorry, there is a mistake on the slide. It should be the requester indicates offer of the data return, and the biobank indicates if they can accept the data return or if they want to reject the data return. And the requester can also abandon the request, of course, if it turns out non-realistic or they no longer need it. This can be done here. Yep, so this was about it. I think we're close to the end of the webinar. So if there are any questions, any further questions, I would be more than happy to answer those. And I would like to thank everybody for your attention, those who stayed with us until this end of the presentation. So are there any further questions? I will open the chat window if I can. Well, I can't see the questions actually.
No, we don't have more questions, Peter.
Okay, so the conclusions. As Bbmri, we're providing this platform from the discovery all the way to the delivery and tracing of that process. And we would like to encourage you to use it, both on the requester side as well as on the biobanker side. What might happen also for the requesters is that you're approaching some biobanks that are in the directory, but are not yet registered in the Negotiator platform. In such a case, we're chasing those biobanks that are not registered yet to get registered and to get back to you. We are now also considering to help the life for the requesters, that we will offer you to do the request on your behalf. So I've already mentioned it before that we're also accepting requests by email by sending it to the help desk. Sometimes we also get those requests through the contact or through direct communication. And in such case, we either invite the user to the requester to register and file the request themselves, or we can file it on your behalf. and help you with the whole process, and we can transfer the request back to you once the negotiation is has ended and the availability of the material is indicated, for instance. So all of this is possible. We're seeing rather pretty increasing use of the platform, and we're happy about it. And we're keeping eye on how the biobanks respond to the requests, and we're trying to help the biobanks in order to communicate efficiently, of course, in the platform. So if there are any problems, the biobanks can always reach to us, say what the problems are, and we will also work on measuring that, not only that we measure the performance, and that is what is happening even now, but about also discussing the performance metrics with the biobanks, so that we ensure that the maximum number of users is satisfied by the negotiation process. This is quite important for both the biobanks and the central or the overall Bbmri-Eric, because this is the main goal of the infrastructure. So I would like to thank everybody for participating today. If there are any more questions, if you need some hands-on guidance, feel free to drop us an email. We will, either myself or somebody from the team will help you, and we will look forward to receive more requests from SMEs, also hopefully through thanks to this webinar or webinars like this. And I would like to hand over back to Pablo if he has still something to say. And I think we have 2 minutes to go, if I'm not mistaken. Or is Pablo still?
Yes, sorry. Thank you very much, Peter, for the nice presentation. Thank you very much for the digital hands-on presentation. And as you said, if you have any further questions, they will be happy to answer you per email or whatever. Thank you very much, everyone.
And as I said, my offer goes, of course, both to the requesters as well as to the biobankers. So if any of you run into any troubles, if you need any help, please let us know. We're here for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for taking part into this webinar, and please stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.